John Martin, the dance critic of the New York Times for many years, mainly before you were born, and he was probably still alive when you came into being, but was no longer the New York Times dance critic. But he was very important to the American dance at a time in which the so-called modern dance came along. We had fairly illustrious critics at that time around, like Walter Terry and others as well. But Martin was interested in what was coming along that was new and unusual for a critic on the New York Times. Continued to stick his neck out about new dancers and new dance ideas, and was really in that way very much a constant contemporary and a wonderful help to the oncoming young dancers. And I mean, you know, the good old Martha Grahams and Doris Humphreys and so on and so forth of that day. At that time, he wrote a book. He wrote several, and in one of them a chapter says how to look at dancing and how not to look at dancing, which is sort of a curiosity and rather nice for you to sometimes look up. In it, he suggests, and that is also true to the time in which he wrote, that to look at dance, if you are really interested in looking at dance, if this is what you go to see dance for, in order to see what it really is like, leave your mind with your coat in the wardrobe outside, so that you are free of intellectual bondage or cerebral conceptions, and just go in as a being. Now, looking at dance has a lot to do with you filling in a lot of what isn't there or doesn't seem to be there, depending on what you see. Conventional dance in our time, and as it has come forward through history to our time, of course makes looking at dance easy, and that was its purpose. I'm now talking mainly about ballet and theater dancing, which is a commercial theater where you pay your money and you expect to understand what's going on, and you also expect not to be worried about what you have to look at, and you also expect to sit comfortably and have a good time, and all that sort of thing. And that exists and should exist forever, hopefully. It's part of our culture, it's part of our tradition. And why not? I mean, why should you not have a good time looking at something if you're not deeply interested in all these strange things that modern artists are doing? After all, you go to the opera, and you may not go to a modern string quartet. You might want to go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and look at Rembrandt and painters of the 19th century and be perfectly happy with them, and stay away from the Expressionism, Cubism, etc., right into our day. But if you are alive, as you are, because you are here, and somehow you are engaged by dance, or you probably wouldn't have hold the jobs that you do, something about dance is somewhere cooking around, or you just wouldn't be here, then you should really see the full spectrum. And you should see the whole panorama of what is going on. And you also should, wherever you go back to, see what there is of it. Because the new phases of dance are, of course, very, very intriguing, because they are unexpected. They are not something that you know of what you are going to see. There are ways in which we probably should not look at dance, namely, to depend on the program too much, to hope that the printed word will be a guide. Good titles, meaning titles that really give you something of a hint as to what the choreographer wishes to do, or where the piece might be going, are very helpful for the visitor, for the onlooker. It's not necessarily customary at this point for all choreographers to give you good titles. Some people just don't want to give you any titles. What is it that Trish Barnes says, somebody going a fishing or something like that? Titles that perhaps have some connection with some memory, with something in Trish, have nothing whatsoever to do with any of you or any of us. We have no connection with it, nor does the dance have it. And this is not good titling. And some of our greatest artists don't want to do good titling. They don't want to help you. Why they don't leave the program blank, I've never found out. Because you might as well. This is about all the help you get, is the equivalent of it being blank. Now, if the program is blank, that is not bad program making. Because then it's up to you what you find. And a lot of how to look at dance has to do with you and what you bring to it and what you get from it and what you do while you're there. You follow me? One really does one's own dance program experience. And they're probably as different as we are people, as many people as we are. Because even if we have good titling or if we have no titling, we still will all come out slightly differently from it. Because these are human experiences of the body, and they are all different with all of us. And don't be too disconcerted if what goes on doesn't immediately make sense. Don't worry your head about it, but keep saying to your head, go away, go away, go away. Let me just be eyes, sensitivity, muscles, a body, an ear. Don't think, let it happen. It's not immediately easy, but if you get used to doing it, you will also go back. You'll have more appetite, more curiosity. How many of you are very fond of poetry? I thought probably a lot of you. Very often you have to read a poem of our day over and over and over and over again. This is the lucky thing that the poet has. It's printed, it's in your hands, and you can look at it again and again and again. It's wonderful. The dance actually is in the same boat. It should be seen again and again. Except it isn't printed on a piece of paper. It is not in your hands. So search the opportunity to see it again when it is at hand here, for instance, and go a second night or third night. But altogether, it's a very telling thing for you to do. It's go, have another look. I think you can always go away and say, I knew it. It wasn't for me. But then you also know it wasn't. You gave it a second test. Because sometimes we are at fault. We didn't like the dinner. We're tired. We would rather go to bed. You know, lots of things. Very often, very unimportant things make us dislike something immensely because it comes for us at the wrong time, or we are not there to really take it in. And then very much so, do go and see it again. It might get better, or you might be through with it.
Do you have any fears or concerns about the direction that choreographers are taking today? Anything that really personally affects you or bothers you?
None whatsoever. Choreographers have always been crazy, and they had to be. They've always been slightly ahead. I happened to have the opportunity as a young dancer to be in Martha Graham's company when she was a young dancer. And she was very new to the dance world, to the theater world, to the world of the intellect in New York and in America. And she was not accepted. She was not accepted at all. We were only a very small handful of women in her company. This was before she could afford to have really a company and have men dancers. It was the very, very beginning. And she used to do Sunday afternoon matinee because she couldn't afford a night performance at all. And she couldn't afford a theater for an evening, so she would take the Guild Theater in the afternoon. She would dance, and the curtain would come down, and there wouldn't be a sound. People didn't even applaud. They didn't know what they were looking at. So when we were on the program, when our piece was finished, we would put our coats on and we'd rush out into the house and to the back behind the building. And when the curtain came down, we'd say, "Bravo, bravo, bravo, Martha, bravo, bravo." And people would turn around and say, "What in the world is going on back there?" And we'd be very quiet. Go back, you see, do our next piece and so on. But it was that kind of pioneering that simply sort of went, "Come on now, you're looking at something. Why don't you at least, politely or something?" Martha Graham used to sit alone in her dressing room. Nobody would think of going backstage. Finally, I'm using Martha as an example because I know something about her life and her development to being the kind of artist and star she is to us in our lives. And you finally had to give out tickets who could come in backstage at all. You see, I mean, the thing turned completely on. So. But to your answer, what looks out of this world or too much in this world to us at this moment will probably be old-fashioned 5 years from now. By that time, we probably will have caught up with what this is and say, oh, yes, of course they did that, when. And I looked at it and I couldn't make head or tail of it. I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't worry at all. I think we need always to hope that there are those that are restless enough to try new things, that are not satisfied with the forms and the shapes in which they have even grown up. They have to burst through this. They have to try. They will be radical, of course. A lot of them will be very radical. And I don't mean this necessarily in a political sense, but artistically radical. And that's probably why we call them way out. Right? Far out. Yeah, thank you. Far out. And that's probably why. But treat yourself to it. This is a highly individual thing. What you like, where you fit in, what things come your way, what suddenly crosses your path and changes many, many, many things to something that you hadn't thought about, that hadn't been there, that you hadn't experienced. Or you will reject it and you'll say, "I'll be perfectly happy without it." Don't ever worry about that in any way. Just live fully. Be very alive. My students very often say, "And now really, who is your most favorite choreographer?" And I go, "Oh my God, do I have any?" It's a very personal matter. I hope maybe this gives you a little bit of a slant, another slant of looking. Enjoy it. It's very nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bessie.